There are moments in a hearing when the noise drops away and everything becomes painfully simple. Gregory Meeks didn't ask a question designed to dazzle. He asked one designed to reveal. He forced a witness to choose between a legal theory and the plain facts of everyday life. Does a trade deficit constitute a national emergency? That sounds like a policy discussion, but framed the way Meeks framed it, it becomes a constitutional and moral question.
Mr. Bessent, I'm just a plain, simple man, the average, everyday American is looking at this hearing today. So can you tell me first, does trade deficits constitute a national emergency?
The hollowing out of the U.S. manufacturing
No, just yes or no.
class.
Yes or no? Yes or no,
It's a
sir?
national emergency, sir.
It does. It does. You're telling me trade deficits equals a national or creates?
Persistent and prolonged.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And do you know also, sir, that for the last 4 decades, we've had trade deficits in the United States of America, and nobody said it was an emergency? Democratic and Republican presidents? You know what that says to me? That it's not an emergency because it hasn't been for 4 decades. It says to me that we should bring tariffs back to the United States Congress so that we can make that determination as the Constitution has said and not try to go around Congress. That's just unbelievable to me. Let me ask this question. Maybe I missed it. Who was the president, and who has been the president since January 20th, 2025?
Donald J. Trump.
Okay. And who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes? You one of those non-believers that the election, the American people didn't vote?
I am not.
You're not? You said one believes? Do you believe in the Constitution of the United States and it should be abided by?
I believe in the Constitution of the United States.
So you believe in it without any second thought. You don't have to think about it. You believe in it and you would abide by it. Is that correct?
I have and I do, sir.
Okay. Well, do you know that a president has said he may or may not, he don't know? Let me ask this question. I couldn't believe my ears. Sunday, during NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump credited himself for the strong economy in 2024 when Joe Biden was president, but then he blamed President Biden for a weak economy in 2025 when he was president. Now, I'm not so sure how the American people puts that together. In 2024, strong economy, he tries to take the credit. In 2025, when he's the president, he blames Joe Biden. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to most Americans. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you're a businessman, it doesn't make sense to you either. It can't possibly make sense to you. Let me ask this question. If a government, say, look, Argentina, I remember when I came here, and Argentina kept failing to pay its debt. Not once or twice or 3 times. And we were all upset about it, and we said that they needed somebody needed to take over their government. You know, somebody should help the president of Argentina. If the United States or didn't pay his debt or something like that, we'd be very upset about that if we couldn't pay our debt. I mean, that's one of our focuses. Is that not correct?
Sir, the United States will always meet its debt obligations.
Always. Well, let me ask you this. Donald Trump, the deal maker, and you didn't answer Ms. Velasquez's questions, no deals, although he said 3 weeks ago that there would be deals. But Donald Trump, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 times failed to pay his debts on his business and went bankrupt. And you're going to call that a good business, man?
The gentleman's
I wouldn't
time
invest
has
in that
expired.
company.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Wagner, the chair of our subcommittee on capital markets, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will try to keep my...
Trade deficits are an economic measurement. They mean a country imports more than it exports. For decades, the United States has run trade deficits, under presidents of both parties, because our economy consumes a huge variety of goods, and because capital flows into the U.S. to buy our stocks, bonds, and property. That's not by itself a crime. It's not automatically a crisis. To call a long-standing structural economic pattern a national emergency is to reach for extraordinary powers that the Constitution assigns to Congress. Meeks primes us to see that distinction. Persistent trade deficits are a policy challenge. Calling them an emergency is a legal escalation that changes who gets to decide. When Bessent hesitates, Meeks doesn't just press for an answer, he presses for accountability. There's a simple institutional question under the theatrical one. Who has the authority to impose tariffs? Congress does. The Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate commerce among the states and to levy taxes and tariffs. A president can act in crises, but the framers intentionally made tariffs a legislative decision because tariffs redistribute costs across the country. They raise prices for consumers, they protect some domestic industries while penalizing others, and they can trigger retaliation abroad. Meeks is reminding the American people that the rule of law was written that way on purpose. Meeks then pivots to something even more elemental, truth about power and responsibility. He asks, bluntly, who was president in 2024 and who is president now? That may sound like trivia, but it isn't. In a functioning constitutional system, naming who held office is a baseline fact. When top advisors slip, hedge, or speak in conditional terms about who led when, it signals something deeper, either confusion, political pressure, or a willingness to rewrite the narrative for advantage. Meeks forces the issue because accountability depends on being able to say plainly who did what and when. He also cuts through a rhetorical game you hear in politics all the time. Take credit when things look good, shift blame when they look bad. Meeks points out how that pattern erodes trust. If a leader credits himself for a year's economic strength when he wasn't in office, and then blames his predecessor for a downturn once he is in office, the public gets a signal. Policy isn't being explained, it's being sold. Good governance requires consistent attribution. If policy choices produced results, explain which ones and how. If outcomes were driven by global trends, acknowledge them. That's what Meeks is demanding, honesty, not spin. There's also a practical lesson tucked into the exchange. Tariffs are not a magic wand. They can protect specific industries, but they also raise costs on consumers and producers who rely on imported inputs. They can provoke retaliation from trading partners, hurting exporters. They can realign supply chains, sometimes for the better, sometimes at great expense. Saying bring tariffs back is easy. Weighing who benefits and who pays is not. Meeks wants a deliberative process, not a unilateral executive shortcut disguised as emergency authority. Then Meeks rams the final, humanizing knockout, the question of credibility. He reminds the committee and the country that someone who repeatedly failed to repay creditors in private business dealings raises legitimate questions about judgment and reliability in the public arena. Business bankruptcies are complicated and not necessarily disqualifying by themselves, but patterns matter. If a leader's history shows a pattern of walking away from obligations, voters and policymakers must ask whether that pattern will translate into governance choices that leave others on the hook. This exchange is more than a political gotcha. It's an architecture lesson about how our system was built to allocate power, a civics lesson about why naming facts matters, and an economics lesson about trade-offs. Meeks does not simply shout. He teaches. He forces viewers to consider who decides tariffs, what a trade deficit actually means, how policy tools affect real people, and why credibility matters when someone is calling the shots. If you want to take this further, think about a single example in your own life. A product you buy every week that depends on global supply chains. Imagine a tariff suddenly raises its price by 20%. Who pays? How does that ripple through your budget? That's the concrete reality behind the technical language in these hearings.